not really nervous, maybe a little emotional. And I'm jealous because I have no clue how to do a PowerPoint. No, clueless. Clueless. So y'all can just look at me. Just look at me. And I tell you, this morning I got up when God first told me I was to do this. I was a little nervous. I go home. I'm telling my husband, I'm like, he didn't know what had taken place in all my prayers. And I said, they want me to speak. I told Karen, is 2 to 3 minutes enough? She said, no, 20 to 30. He said, you should have no problem with that. I said, this is different. This is different. And so my nerves subsided. And for weeks now, it's been a wonderful experience. Just getting to this point with me and God. And even this morning, I got up, I had extra energy. I've had 2 crazy work weeks because I took a week off, but I just had energy this morning, and I go to the gym occasionally, and I thought, I really need to get to the gym. I've got to walk some of this and calm it down. And so I hop in the car, I back out of the driveway, and when I leave my house, I only go up about 3 houses, and I make a right to go to the gym. When I'm coming to the church, I go straight. So I hop in the car, and as soon as I'm backing out, I start thinking on everything I'm going to say tonight. And I almost drive right past my road to turn because I was coming to church right then to present this. I mean, y'all almost missed it because it almost took place here at 7 o'clock this morning. So, I'm a little bit of a nerdy, but not computer-wise. I went home that night, and I get my Bible out, and I go get note cards, and my husband said, what are you doing? I said, stuff is just coming to me, and but I can't stand to read something and not know what a word means. And if I'm reading a book, whatever, I have to look up a word, and thank goodness now I have a phone, and I can look it up then. So I went and got my old Webster. I still have my Webster dictionary, and got my Bible dictionary, and my phone there and stuff. And the first thing I thought, I'm supposed to give my testimony. I have been saved for 39 years. I have sang a lot. I speak before I sing. I don't have a big problem speaking in church at praise and worship services. I have no problem giving my God praise for all He's done to me. But I thought, what's a testimony for sure? You hear people giving their testimony. I thought, what is a testimony? So I just get the dictionaries out. And Webster said they are statements made under oath to establish a fact. And they were talking about evidence that's presented in court or religious speech. And in my Bible dictionary, it didn't even have a word for testimony. It said, look up witness. And I try to witness at work, and in the world. And so I thought, my job is, I need to establish the fact. For a Christian, our testimony is we establish facts to prove that we embody the Spirit of a holy living Savior. He's alive in us. He works every day on our behalf to strengthen, to help, to encourage, and to grow us to do His purposes here. That's, to me, what a Christian's testimony should be. And so for all these weeks now, I couldn't remember our first meeting. So it was Labor Day weekend that Karen almost made you give up, but you didn't. For all these weeks, I've been off and on just thinking about my life, and how do I prove God's evidence, in my life? And I try to live it, and I talk about Him, and He's very real and personal to me. So my most recent piece of evidence I want to share is how I got here, where I'm standing right now. I had been in a church for 40 years that I still love, that there were no problems, there were no arguments, nobody made us mad as a family. But we knew it was time to move about 3 years ago. So we came here the last Sunday of October. We had visited another church, and we came here, and it just felt right the first time. So first of all, He moved me after 40 years, and it was hard. very hard. I love those precious people. But I immediately knew, me and my husband, this is where we need to be. I feel like I'm thriving again and growing. So I'm trying to figure out what's my place in this church. Where do I fit in? It's a lot more people. Karen announces, she said, we're going to start planning our women's event. Anybody that thinks they want to help, come. And I'm like, I'll go see what it's about. Maybe I can help. So I go to that first meeting, and they're telling, what's going on. She said, we'd like to have a couple of ladies from the church to give testimonies or speak. And Edie said she felt led. We discussed other people, and one of the other ladies' names of the church was brought up. So they asked her, and she said she would pray about it. A week or two later, Karen, we have a group text we're working together on, and I looked at my phone, and Karen had said that this other person had declined. She didn't feel led to speak. And she said, so, we need to find out who God's got for us. And immediately when I read that, this little voice says, maybe you should speak. And I'm like, no, I shouldn't. That's not me. This is just my mind thinking this. Every morning for 7 or 8 mornings, I don't know how many, when I sit down with God in His Word and just time alone with Him, it come back to me. Day 4 or day 5, I'm like, okay, maybe I should tell Him I need to speak. And I'm like, no, I shouldn't speak. I've only been in that church a year. I know there's so many more women there that have more powerful testimonies than me, that would do a better job. This isn't me. I was off on a Monday, and I got on my back porch, my little prayer closet. My friend Barb loves my porch back there. We have some good God time there. And I got to just spend so much time with God, and it wouldn't leave me alone. And so finally, this is what I told him, because me and God, Jesus is my best friend. I just talk to God just like, I'm going to anybody else. I said, here's the deal, God. And I don't bargain with God. I don't say, if you'll do this for me, I'll do that. I don't bargain with God. If I'm supposed to do something for Him, He doesn't have to do anything for me, because He's done way more than I deserve. But I said, here's the deal. I don't feel worthy. I don't feel adequate. So I will not volunteer. I won't volunteer to do this. I'm afraid I will bump somebody out that should be doing this. So if you want me to do this, you're going to have to open the door for me, wide open. That's just it. That next Sunday, we have another meeting. Karen says, so-and-so declined to speak. She said, but someone has told me, there's a woman in our church that God keeps bringing to her mind that, she said that she should speak. And then Karen said, and that lady is in this room. And then Tammy tells herself, I bet it's Erin. I don't know a lot of these ladies well, but, me and Erin had got to know each other just a little bit. I thought, I bet it's Erin. And Karen says, Tammy, that lady is you. And I about choked. And she looked at me like, I said, give me just a minute. I had to get my breath. Where's she at? Then, no, not Karen. Then Jetta Harris said, she said, Tammy, I can't help it. She said, every time I prayed, you kept coming to my mind. I don't even know your story, but I just feel like you got to speak. So she confessed, and I told him, I said, I got to speak. I couldn't deny. I could not deny. There's one of my most recent pieces of evidence. And I'll tell you something else I told my friend Barb one Saturday morning as I began letting God speak to me. I was so excited because He has revealed a lot to me through this time. I figured out why so many of us feel inadequate and feel like we couldn't. It's a little phrase that I have said, that I have heard said, and it's the phrase, oh, they have such a powerful testimony. At the point we're saved, we have a powerful testimony. We may not have a 30-minute testimony, but we have a powerful testimony. We are unworthy, we are wretched, we are sinners. A holy God sent His only sinless Son for us to die on a cross. And he just freely takes the sin if we'll believe in him and confess our sin and ask for forgiveness. And if that's not powerful, I don't know what is, sisters. I'm sorry, I just don't. We all have a powerful testimony. And from the point we do that, our testimony should continue to build and grow if we're living with him. But we think because maybe we haven't been drugged from the depths of drugs. Maybe we weren't in abusive, relationships, or we wasn't abused as children. Maybe because we just lived fairly normal lives and got married and whatever, we think our testimony isn't powerful. But that's not true. It takes the same strength from God to keep that addict off of drugs. And Karen, I'm going to use you because I know it takes the same strength for him to keep that addict off of those drugs as it has taken my sister Karen to lose 140 pounds. But she started when she cried out to God. Because in Isaiah chapter 40, verses 28 through 31, he says, hast thou not known, hast thou not heard, that the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary. He never gets tired. He never gets weary. So it's not hard for him to do any of this. We've just got to accept it and believe it. And we have a powerful testimony. My goal here, when I end, is that even if you're never called to give your testimony in front of 100 ladies, you still got it. And you've still got a witness, you've got a workplace, you've got a family. We have it. And just be willing to share it. Don't ever think that you don't have a powerful testimony, because you do. And so that's how I ended up here. That's a piece of evidence God, this lady right here, she said, when you say God speaks to you, is it an audible voice? Because Karen and I were there, and it's like, no, I don't hear him in a room, but boy, he's loud in my own ears. It's like I've got my earbuds in, and nobody else can hear him. But the longer I walk with him, the louder he is. The more I learn his word, the easier it is to recognize him. And I look for him now. I look for him in every aspect of my life. I pray about the smallest things. Some people probably think they're crazy. I just pray about them. And they're always answered, yes, no, or maybe. But a lot of times, some of the littlest stuff, then it's right there. I lose something, which I do a lot as I'm getting older. I pray about it, And so I'm going to go back as I got to thinking about my whole testimony and stuff. I got to thinking, what's my first memory? What's the first evidence I have in my life, that God was at work in my life? My dad was from Providence. My mom was from Grapevine. Lived in Providence for a little while, moved to Grapevine. Dad didn't want to live out there. So they just dropped, when I was 11 years old, they dropped right in the middle of Nebo, just halfway. Right in front of the Baptist church. Mom always took us to Sunday school a bit. She was raised in a Christian home. My dad was a lost man, and he had alcohol problems, but we were right in front of the Baptist church, so we started going to church over there when I was 11. After a couple years, the pastor left. Mom really loved them, and she quit going to church, and I kind of did too. At that point, I was about 13. On Sunday mornings, we would be out on the porch, and people would walk to church down there in Nebo and stuff. Some of them would drive, but a lot of them walked. And at some point, all of a sudden, I saw some of the people coming to church one morning, and I felt like I don't want them to see me sitting over here. I should be over there. It was all of a sudden. Then it was like I'm supposed to be over there. But Mom wasn't there, Dad wasn't there. He was in the swing, so I kind of went in the house. I didn't want him to see me. That happened a couple Sundays, and finally I told Mom, I said, I'm going to go to church tomorrow. She said, well, that's fine, hon. So I went by myself, and that's the church I was at for 40 years. So I was saved there when I was 14. Curtis Milton led me to the Lord. And immediately upon being saved, I had a burden for my father who was lost. I knew Mom was a saved woman, but I had a burden for my lost father, and carried that with me for a long time, and I'll go on with that later. So, I'm saved at 14. I go along living life, doing church. I used to pray for a husband one day that would love me, when I was a teenager, because my dad wasn't the perfect husband, and my mother was a very good woman, and I wanted somebody to love me and cherish me. And so I have that man. He started coming to my house when I was 14, and he's a wonderful husband, a wonderful father, a godly man, and supports me in all I do. And so then we're married for about 6 years. We didn't know if we wanted to have children, maybe not. I was a tomboy. And I had a friend that had a baby, and we went to visit her one day, and I held her little baby, and I go home and tell Mark, I said, what do you think about trying a baby? You know, that sounds like fun, I guess. We'll try one of them. I told somebody at work one day, I was listening to a friend talk about when her baby was born, and she said, oh, I thought my heart was going to burst and this and that. And I'm like, I feel so bad. I don't remember. You know, yeah, I wanted him. And I told my customer, I said, we adore our son. He was a gift from God. We wanted him. And I said, but we were both so ignorant. But I said, we've both been responsible, hard workers. We try to do the best we can. So thank God he survived, you know. And we had Ryan, or we got pregnant. No, we decided to have the baby. So I got pregnant. My mother was ecstatic. She had wanted a grandbaby. She was tired of granddogs and grandcats and all that. So she was just ecstatic. I found out in April I was pregnant. My mom was 44. In June, my mom was told she had cancer, and there was not going to be able to cure it. They kind of hoped to put it in remission. And at that point, when I was 18, I'm going to jump back, my dad quit drinking when I was 18. Mom finally left him. He got divorce papers, and he said, if you come home, I'll get help. And he had quit drinking, and he had been sober for like 8 years. And I had a good relationship with my dad. And I had also, during those times he got sobered a couple times, God gave me the burden for him as far as him being lost. And I talked to him a couple of times, and he said, Tam, I know I'm lost. You know, I know I'm going to hell. He said, but, you know, that's how it is. He left home early. He had been his dad was abusive, and he was one of them, I've never needed anybody. I work hard, I take care of myself, you know, and blah, blah, blah. So, but we had, you know, he had changed a lot, good relationship, but Mom gets cancer. And a few days after, it just ripped my world apart. I was pregnant. Everybody was happy. And Mom has cancer, and she's probably going to die. And God, how am I going to take care of this baby? My sister loved to babysit. I was the tomboy. I wanted to mow the yard and play ball. And Dad set me down on the doorsteps one day, and he said, Tam, he said, I need to talk to you. And I said, yeah. And he said, I can't fix this for you girls. He said, I've always tried to provide for you good, and I've always tried to fix things for you. And he said, I can't fix this. And he said, you're going to lose a lot of things and people in life. You'll probably lose me. He said, you're never going to lose anything like what you lose when you lose your mom. He said, they're just special. And I had enough faith to tell him, I said, Dad, I don't expect you to fix this. Only one person can fix this. Only God can fix this. It's all in his hands. You know, he's in control of it all. She does treatments and stuff. Somewhere along November, it was getting colder. Dad had started going to church. He realized, I talked to him, you know, and I think that he knew that point. He couldn't fix it. He was self-made to a point and took care of everything, but this was out of his hands, so he started going to church with Mom. She had been back regular in church for years. And he called me one Sunday night. I'd been to church and got home, and my phone rang, and I looked caller ID, and I thought, yeah, and I answered the phone. He said, Tam. I said, yeah. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm sitting on the couch. He said, well, I just want you to know, baby, I'm going to go to heaven with you one day. And I said, what? He said, I got saved tonight. Mom always said, she said, whether I live or die, it was all worth it for that, you know. And so then in December, Ryan was born. And then also in December, my new converted father, who was truly saved, he began growing. He read through his whole Bible. It took me half of my life, and he read through it. He always liked to read. So Ryan was born in December, but in the meantime, in those few months there, from June to when Mom got cancer, then Dad gets saved. October, my grandfather, his father, had cancer a couple years before. His cancer came back with a vengeance. First week of December, my dad's oldest brother was diagnosed with cancer. He had been in the military, and Agent Orange got him. So Ryan was born December the 28th. My grandfather, his father, died December the 15th. His brother died January the 22nd, and his wife died February the 15th. And I said, God, what are you doing to this man? It was bad enough what I felt like he was doing to us. I said, what are you doing to this man? You know, I questioned God a little. But we go on. Dad was sober. He kicked in. He helped so much. I keep doing church. I'm regular in the church. I'm praying and reading my Bible and taking care of my son and doing all the things I should do. And she talked about experiencing God. My deal with experiencing God was over 20 years ago. And we done the Experiencing God study at our church. My mouth is getting really dry, imagine that. We had done that Experiencing God study at our church, and one of my lessons one week said, it was about forgiveness. And, you know, do you have a grudge against somebody, you know? What do you got? Who do you got a grudge against? Who have you not forgiven? And then one sentence said, do you have a grudge against God? I said, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I got a big one. And so I confessed it. I told him I was angry. I didn't understand why. It's not fair. I know people are going to die. I had two precious grandmothers, but the one that I was so close to, who I'm in her whole image except her looks, because she was 4'10" and weighed 78 her whole life, I'm her. She was a hairdresser. She was crafty. She liked big hair and makeup. And he took her when I was 12, and it about killed me. And then now, Mom, and it's just not fair. And God said, but haven't I taken care of you? You took care of that baby. He's healthy. You have a home. You've not done without anything. And so I let that all go that day. I just let the whole grudge go. I confessed it. I realized up to the point my mother died, I had faith to save me. I had saving faith. But I have learned, for me personally, there's a lot difference in faith and trust. For me, they're not the same. I had faith. I have faith that God can do anything. But when He's doing it, will I trust Him? I think that's the difference. I know He can do anything, but am I going to surrender and trust what He chooses to do to grow me? At that point, I started learning just a little bit about trust. I was like, well, I thought I wouldn't make it. I thought the kid couldn't survive, and we're still here, and God still loves me, and He's still good. So I turned my relationship around with Him. Like I said, it took 2 years of an ugly grudge. And so all that happened in 1992, and so then we're back to living life, and Dad's doing pretty good. He struggled with depression. Mom was gone, but he was sober, and he was saved, and he kicked in, and we built good relationships with him. And in December 2002, went to sleigh ride with my son and had a big old accident. I was the driver on the front of the sled, and we didn't know there was a big ditch at the bottom, and my feet were straight out. We were going very fast, and it was kind of dark, and I slammed right into the side of that big ditch, and I had bones sticking out my leg, and it was a mess. So I go surgery, and they patch up my head and all this, and I didn't even know what a compound fracture was. The doctor kept saying, this is pretty serious. You got a compound fracture, and I didn't know what that was, and this and that. And I thought, it'd be all right. I've always worked out. I've been athletic, I'll be back to work in no time. And so I got out of my cast 11 weeks later, and I was on crutches for a while. Then he starts telling me to bear weight. I ended up, never would send me to therapy, because I was struggling to walk from the get-go, and I ended up being on crutches for 10 months. 10 months. I went back to work on crutches. My leg got huge every day. I struggled. I spent a lot of time down. I spent a lot of time in the Bible. People would say, well, what's taking you so long? You just broke your leg. And I felt the same way. I thought, what's the deal? But I knew in my heart, and I told more than one person, I said, I don't know. I'm doing all I can. God's doing something in me. That's all I know. This is God's will. And it's in His time. And I fully did. Even though I wasn't happy, I trusted Him with that. And so I learned after all of it was over, and even after 10 months, I went to Nashville, got a second opinion. I got some therapy that got me back on my feet. I limped for 3 years. Thank God for Selena Falk. Finally, my foot hurt me so bad, they sent me for insoles, and I got Selena. And that little squirt threw me up on that table, and she straddled me. She started yanking them legs and this and that, and she said, well, your leg's shorter. I said, well, I've told my husband it felt shorter twice, but I don't know. So she got some insoles in my shoe, and in my shoes I walk right. I don't walk too good without my shoes, and I have to treat my leg well. But I will tell you this. During that time, I learned one of my biggest sins. It's easy to knock out the big 10. I didn't kill. I didn't steal. I was the good person. But when you knock all those out and you really want to grow for God and you're very sincere, boy, He shows you all the stuff in your heart, the deep, ugly stuff maybe nobody else sees. And one of my biggest sins was pride. I thought I was in control of so much. I thought people who complained about being hurt or I can't do that because this or that, I thought they was just lazy and weenies. And I thought if you'd work out, if you'd do this, you could do that. And, well, I was wrong. I was very wrong. I call my little limp in my ankle that acts up and keeps my pride intact my thorn in the flesh. It's a physical. I have spiritual thorns in the flesh, like my pride and stuff like that. So I go on, get over that. That accident happened in 2002. My dad had really been struggling. He had remarried after 7 years and wasn't happy, and so he divorced, and he battled depression and missed Mom, and about 2 years before we lost him, he started drinking again. We had him in and out of treatment centers. It convicted him, and he lived with so much guilt because he wasted so many years drinking. Him and Mom had just started to live, he said, and she's gone. And I would say, Dad, that's Satan. He wants to do this to you. It's him. He will use whatever he can to defeat us. And he'd say, I know, Tam, but he had talked suicide a few times, and many people said, oh, when they talk about it, they won't do it. And I said, I believe he can do it. And on May the 12th, 2005, we got a call from his friend that he had found him dead. Either his friend or me or my sister, one went every day. We figured that he would accidentally die from an overdose because he was just using pills and alcohol to keep himself knocked out. So we would go check. And like I said, we had him in and out of this facility, and people said, well, you need to have him committed. And I love when people tell you what you need to do. I said, we tried that. They get him sober because they're not going to check him out when he's drunk and drugged, and he sobers up. He's a 64-year-old intelligent man. He makes fun of the psychiatrist when he leaves because he knows what to say. He did not no longer want to live, so he done what he had always said he would do with a gun. We don't know where he got it from, but he put it in the roof of his mouth and he pulled the trigger. We thought we had all the guns, but we didn't. But you know, by that point, it was sad. It broke my heart for him. What broke my heart the most was me and my sister were sitting out on his truck. I felt like I was in a TV movie. The cops were everywhere. The tape was up. We couldn't go in the house. There had to be an autopsy, even though we knew he'd done it and all of that. And I told my sister, I said, I wonder how many drugs and how much alcohol he had in him to get the nerve to do that. And we got the toxicology report. He didn't. He got sober enough he couldn't take it anymore. But God, the questions, and what little bit of anger you would think you would have and guilt, it was small. God he took care of it all. A lot of people question, my sister questioned a little bit, well, I feel bad, maybe we should have tried something more, but we done all we could do. So Ryan is a teenager, turning into a teenager. I started praying for Ryan's wife. All these things are evident, how God just takes away stuff and helps you deal with stuff the more your trust grows. And I started praying for Ryan's wife when he was in his crib. He wasn't even a year old. I knelt by that crib and said, God, please, prepare already his wife. Send him a godly woman one day. I prayed for his salvation first and then her. And so he graduates, goes to school, has a good job, and he brought in 2 or 3 girls, and I told Mark, I said, I'll be nice to all of them. One of them's going to be my daughter-in-law. Ryan's done told me he will put me in a home, so I got to be good to this girl. He would tease me. I'd say, you got to take, he said, I'll put you in a home. I said, I got to be good to all these girls. But Heather and y'all that go to church here, Heather is our daughter-in-law from God. We're very blessed to have her. She's another answer to prayer. She's another evidence that God hears my prayers and He's alive and working in our lives. They got married at 19 and 21. My son's a lineman for Kenergy. He climbs the big poles. And I told my husband, I said, I sure appreciate you making him love everything that's dangerous. Before he started working, I said, every time he leaves here, he's got a 4-wheeler and guns in his truck. And then in 10th, 11th grade, we had the ice storm. He's like, I want to be a lineman. He wants to climb high and mess with power. But I'm proud of him. He's always worked hard, and I'm very thankful for him. Sorry, he was born to the ignorant parents, but God blessed it all. People would say, I've had customers to tell me, and I appreciate it. They're like, well, you done a good job. Well, I said, no, I didn't. And we say that we pray and we laugh, but I don't laugh, people. I prayed before he got into trouble. I knew I couldn't keep my eye on him all the time. And so on October the 7th, about that time, she was in college. He was working. I left the shop to run to the mall, grab some lunch, and my phone rang. It was his district supervisor. Her name's Casey. She said, Tammy, Ryan's been in an accident. She said, but he's going to be okay. I said, okay, what happened? She said, well, he got burned. And I don't know what burned meant, I thought, well, how did he get burned? And she said, well, he come in contact with 7,200 volts. It went in his left hand, through his heart, come out his right, and they had to shock him 3 times. I'm good in emergency. Sometimes I think I should have been a nurse. I don't fall apart. We got to get business done. I said, does he know anything? She said, yeah. She said, when I walked up, he said, Casey, what happened? Did I fall asleep in the bucket? I said, okay. She said, you need to come to Marion Hospital. She said, I called Heather. She's falling apart. She said, she don't even really know what happened. When she told her to come to the hospital, she started crying. So I called Mark, and I met them in Providence. I didn't make it to the hospital. I called Casey called me back. She said, where are you at? I said, I'm just in Providence. And she said, well, she kind of scared me. She said, well, you're not going to make it. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, they're life flighting him out now. So we went to the hospital, and Mark, he's breaking down. He doesn't handle stuff well. I put him in the back seat, and Heather got up front working the GPS. That's his boy, you know. He just kind of falls apart. Heather's working the GPS, because I never been to Vanderbilt. That's a whole nother world down there. It's like a small town. And so we get down there, because I told Mark he was tore up. I said, he's alive. He knows people. If he doesn't have an arm, we'll get him an arm. You know, we'll get him an arm. We'll deal with that when we get there. You know, that's it. So we walk in, and he's sitting there, and the back of his hands look like burnt baked potatoes. The skin was all blowed up and rolled off, and this one was black, and he's just staring. And I said, do they hurt? And he said, no, I can't feel them. But anyways, Heather, she's all tore up. So we spent from Tuesday to Friday. They let him go home because he drove them nuts. But I was so tired. We got down there, I don't know what time, about 2 or 3 o'clock, and we spent some time in the ER, and they sent us up to the burn unit. They said when they get through with him there, because they had assessed him in trauma, and they said when they get through with him there, they'll call you, and no matter what time it is, y'all can see him tonight. And this is real funny. You just got to know my son. He's a people person. He's a socializer. He's the only child, so he got all of our attention. But they never called us. It was like 9:30 at night. There was about 20 people in that big waiting room. And the phone rings in there. And somebody said, is there someone here for the Dickerson family? And I look at Heather, because I try to be a good mother-in-law, and she was his wife. And, I looked at her. I said, do you want to take that? She said, no, you can. So I go to that phone. I said, hello? Ryan says, Mom, where are y'all at? I said, we're out here in the waiting room. Well, why ain't you come back here to see me? I said, nobody's called. And so he had asked some nurse or somebody back here for their phone and hunted us down. And so anyways, we went back there and got to see him. They had him in critical, and we had to suit up and all that. So we stayed all night there, exhausted. I didn't get any sleep. The next day we're doing the same thing. They're telling us, it's going to be 3 days before we really know anything certain. I'm praying and stuff like that. You're kind of numb, you're just kind of numb. And I knew I had a lot of questions, and I tried to pray, and a scripture came to my mind the second or third day there. His mercies are new every morning. And I had never used that scripture, so I look it up, and it was in Lamentations. And my sister come up on Wednesday to bring us some clothes, and she started crying. I said, don't cry, Stacy. I said, I haven't cried. She said, how can you not cry? I said, I ain't been able to. I couldn't in the room. People were sleeping, and when it goes, it's going to go. I couldn't. And so there was a public restroom right outside there of the big burn waiting unit. And I get up one morning about 4:30, and I would go in there early. I had my gym bag in the car, so I had makeup and all that stuff. And I'd go in there and scrub off and try to slap some more on. I don't know why, but anyways. Finally, Thursday morning, I went in the bathroom. And it was only one stall bathroom. You could lock your stuff in there, but everybody used it. I went in the bathroom, and I laid face down, prostrate in that bathroom floor, and I bawled, and I squalled, and I snotted, and I begged, but I did not question. I no longer questioned, because at this point, I had grown, and I had my son. But I still thought, he was worried, Mom, I'm not working bills. He couldn't remember a lot of stuff. Short-term memory was going on. And I don't know how long I laid in that bathroom floor begging and pleading and letting it all go. But when I couldn't really pray. I didn't know what to ask for. But I knew my friend Barb would pray, so I called her house at 5:15. If you don't have people in your life, we need all our sisters to pray for us, but you need to get you 3 or 4 that you honestly trust and you can tell everything to, that won't go anywhere. One of my wife's sisters done that for me several years ago. She said, God's told me, and she picked us out. And so I called, and I told Barbara, I said, you got to pray. I don't know what to pray for anymore. And that hospital became my mission field. While I was there, I thought, I'm just here. So I was kind to a lady whose son come in with flash burns, and her husband had went home and been gone too long, and her cell phone was dead. And I asked her, did she need anything? She said, I'd love to call my husband. I gave her the phone, and I showed her the next morning where to find a cafeteria and the coffee. I thought, I'm here. I might as well try to show the love of God to somebody. And I was standing outside Ryan's room one day, and she come down the hall, and I said, how's he doing? And she told me, and I said, well, we're going to go home today. We'll have to be back next week. And she gave me a big old hug. I don't know the lady's name. She gave me a big hug. She said, I don't know what I would have done without you. Experiencing God also says, if you don't know what you should be doing for God, just look around you. He's at work all around us. Just join him in something, So that's just what I kind of tried to do there. We go back for Monday for his skin grafts. All day long, everybody had got put back to a room. They wanted to send Ryan back to the burn unit. They couldn't get a room. At 3:30 that evening, me and Heather were still there, us and one other couple, and they were just waiting and waiting. There's 4 people in that big waiting room. And all of a sudden, I heard this voice say, Tammy, and I turned around, and it was a guy named Sidney we had went to church with for years. And he come over there. He said, what are you doing? And I said, well, Ryan was in an accident. And he said, I heard about that. I said, what are you doing? He said, my brother-in-law, Mike's up here. He said, do you know the Roman roads? I said, he'd been in church for years. I don't know why he couldn't do this, but anyways. I said, yeah. He said, do you have a Bible? I said, well, it's in my car. I said, I brought it. I didn't know what room we was in. He said, I need you to come to talk to my brother-in-law. He said, he could die any minute. He's asked for a preacher. He said, our preacher can't get here till tomorrow. He said, they sent the church chaplain in, and she prayed over him and told him he's going to be just fine because she's prayed for him and he'll be in heaven. And he said he ain't going to be in heaven just because she prayed for him. So I said, Heather, will you be okay? And she said, yeah. A few years before that, I had got real complacent. I talked to my pastor about how complacent I got about lost people because everybody I asked, are you saved? They said, yeah, and stuff. But I prayed about it, and I had my burden for lost people had gotten greater, and I cared. So Sidney took me up to Mike's room. He couldn't hardly talk without oxygen. He was very alert, but he needed the oxygen bad. And I talked to him, and I had my Bible there, and I talked to him about some scriptures and about being lost, and he said, yeah, I know I'm lost, and, I want to go to heaven, and this and that. So I told him what he needed to do, and I said, do you want to pray yourself? Sidney can lead you in a prayer. So Sidney bowed his head and prayed, and I stood there over Mike and watched him, and Mike said every word of that sinner's prayer. And when Sidney got through, he smiled the biggest smile Mike did, and reached out to give me a hug. And the next morning, our pastor came to visit. I said, how's Mike today? He said he died last night. So I told Edie a while ago, I said, until I had a child, and I still don't know the extent of it, we can't love like God, but I said, until I had a child, I didn't really realize what God had done for me. He gave his only perfect son for me. I couldn't give mine for anybody. And then I got to thinking, I thought, because my son suffered, Mike's in heaven. Maybe Mike would have been, maybe Mike wouldn't have been, but I was there. Sidney recognized me from the back of my head. But I thought, if God had said, if you'll let your son suffer, this man can be saved, would I have done it? Probably not. Not when I watched my son go through. Not when I watched that pain hit him on Thursday, that they said Thursday or Friday's going to be his worst day, and my big, strong son, who didn't even ask for the pain medicine when he could get it, started begging and pleading and tears rolling down his face. I got to have something, and shaking from head to toe. Would I have done that? No, maybe I would have went through that myself for Mike. I don't know that. But that's what God had done for me. And he just used me there. I expect him to use me now. I might fail, I might stumble, but I'll look for it. I expect it. I told Brother Gary, our pastor here is so precious. He texted me today. Y'all, he pours his life into us. Oh, he gives us so much, so much. And he told me he was praying for me and this and that, and I texted him and told him back. I said, Brother Gary, this has been the most wonderful journey these weeks, just spending time with God, preparing, letting him reveal this stuff to me. I said, if I don't make it there tonight to share this, it's been a wonderful experience because it's grown me so much. And it's done for me. Well, I hope whatever he uses it for you, to encourage you, to strengthen you, to give you hope. Used to Philippians 4:13 was one of my big verses before my leg accident. This is another thing I've learned about Scripture. 5 years ago, I decided I needed to lose some weight. I've always been a little heavy. It was getting harder on me, and I thought, well, we're going to count the calories again, and then I prayed about it, and so I started using a lot of scriptures. I just kept a little journal every day. I looked me up some scriptures. And I thought maybe I'll lose 10 or 15 pounds, and 30 just kept coming off easy. But I'd done it. It was my journey with Jesus, and I'd done it with those scriptures. And so far, it's still gone. That's my struggle. Food's my drug, like Karen said, you know. But used to, I would use Philippians 4:13 to, you know, do an extra long workout or, you know, something like that. And that's what it's for, you know, that's what it's for. We can do all things. I encourage you to get familiar with Scripture. Our prayers are so much more effective with Scripture. And get familiar with all of them. Paul said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But Paul wasn't only using that because he could run a 5K or because he could stand up here like me and give a testimony. Paul said he could be hungry. Paul says he could suffer. And he could do it in confidence and with peace of mind because of Christ. And one last word I want to share with you. I had no problem before this getting up and praising God, saying a few words about God, or making an announcement about God. I shared about our mission trip. But I told Brother Gary, I said, now just because of this, I can do what God asked us to do in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. And it says, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you for a reason of the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. I'll never forget all this stuff. And even though it was my life and I lived it, I didn't think about all that being my testimony and how much I have to share. Take some time to do this, whether you ever going to stand up here or not. It's been life-changing and God-growing for me, and all the time with Him was just precious. And I'm very humbled that y'all allowed me to stand before you. I've only been in your church a year. I'm very humbled that God used me and called me, and that y'all allowed me to share with you. And I have now asked Miss Kelly to sing my second favorite song. Amazing Grace is my first. My whole life is grace. It's just written all over me. And if any of you are here tonight, you need prayer, you would like to talk to someone, some of our ladies from the church will be right up here on the front row. You are welcome to come down here if you just want to pray, or if you want to talk to one of us, get us by the hand. They would be glad to talk to you.